Well, I'm sure that most of you are familiar with this question. Of course, this is from Nathan Oakley's channel. And if you're a glober, I'm sure you've been told at one time or another that you are both assuming a globe and the radius for that globe.
We have an R value, yes? And I would like you to demonstrate your scientific evidence of this R value.
Of course, what Nathan has never done is given any scientific evidence of the flat Earth equator R value, but we'll get to this a little bit later. Now, I could bring up Eratosthenes and Al-Biruni, who both in the past used clever methods to make estimations of the size of the Earth, but I know Nathan will reject those out of hand. So hopefully Nathan has heard of surveyors because they actually measure the physical world that we live on. Now, measurements by surveyors are also used for maps, and one of the methods they used was triangulation. This is the process of creating a network of triangles by measuring the angle between different points, and then using a combination of measurements and calculations, they can accurately determine the distance between those points. Here's an example of a small triangulation network for the state of Nebraska in the US. And here's an example of a very large triangulation network that was used for the horizontal datum of the United States back in 1931. On the left, we have the triangulation network for Britain, and on the right, we have the Great Trigonometrical Survey of India. Here's two more examples, the North Island of New Zealand on the left and Zimbabwe on the right. Now, every country in the world has been surveyed like this, and this is why we have accurate maps. In fact, they're so accurate that these days you can go to different countries around the world and use your phone to find your exact location. So, Nathan, this would be my evidence of why the globe we live on has a radius of about 3,959 miles, because it's been measured by geodetic surveyors. So Nathan, what about your scientific evidence? And we could start with the R value for the flat Earth equator. Now I know you make the claim that celestial navigation only works on a flat Earth. So that means we can take the surface distance of the North Pole to the equator as the radius of the flat Earth. And that is about 6,215 miles. Now the problem with this graphic is that the globe is not to scale with the flat Earth. But look at the difference in size when they are to scale. The flat Earth is huge in comparison. Even the diameter of the flat Earth equator is much larger than the diameter of the globe. And Nathan, what about the R value of the flat Earth ice wall? That would be about another 4,650 miles. Well, that gives us a radius of about 10,865 miles, which is about 2.7 times larger than the globe radius. Now, the surface area of the flat Earth to the ice wall is almost 371 million miles. This is almost twice the globe's surface area of 197 million miles. So, Nathan, I have a question for you. How would it be possible to hide this size difference? Of course, Nathan might come up with the excuse that the flat Earth equator is only 3,959 miles without realizing that this would mean that suddenly all north-south distances on the flat Earth are about a third less in length than they actually are. Of course, it really doesn't matter what the radius of the flat Earth equator is, because in all cases, the southern hemisphere is going to have over 2 times more surface area than the northern hemisphere. Or do they call them hemiplanes? Well, whatever. Now, since the hemispheres of the globe are of the same size, the same question comes up. How would it be possible to hide this size difference? One glaring example is, why is Australia east-west distance so much longer than the United States on the flat Earth map? You can see that it's about 2 times longer in length. But on the globe, Australia is about 200 miles less in distance east to west. And when you do a Google search about this, they all say the same thing. Australia is only slightly smaller than the United States. So again, Nathan, how would it be possible to hide this size difference? And where is your scientific evidence that Australia is actually almost twice the length from east coast to west coast than the United States? But here's a very easy way to find out who's correct. Let's just compare flight times across Australia and the USA. Here's the distance between Perth on the west coast of Australia and Sydney on the east coast, about 2,040 miles. And the distance between Las Vegas and Washington, D.C. in the United States is about 2,065 miles, or about 25 miles more. Now again, on the globe, these distances are almost the same. But on the flat Earth, the distance between Sydney and Perth is about twice that is between Las Vegas and Washington, D.C. Now, as you can see, for Washington, D.C. to Las Vegas, the flight times are different depending on what direction you're flying. And of course, this is typically due to prevailing wind patterns. So I'm using the round trip time of 9 hours and 27 minutes. And for flights between Sydney and Perth, it is only 9 hours for a round trip, or 27 minutes less than the trip between Las Vegas and DC. Now, I think it's pretty obvious that these flight times match globe distances. And not surprisingly, this is a failure for the flat Earth. But let's don't stop there. Let's compare some flight times across the Pacific Ocean, and I'll start with this one in the southern hemisphere between Auckland, New Zealand and Santiago, Chile, and that is a distance of about 6,019 miles. And we'll compare that to a flight that I have taken many times between Seattle, Washington in the United States and Taipei, Taiwan. And here the distance is about 6,061 miles. That's only about a 42-mile difference. So again, on the globe, the distances between these cities is about the same. But on the flat Earth, the distance between Auckland and Santiago is about 2 times that is between Taipei and Seattle. Again, I'm going to use the round trip time, so this is 23 hours and 40 minutes between Seattle and Taipei. And this is the same time it takes for a round trip between Auckland, New Zealand and Santiago, Chile. So, not surprisingly, we have another flat Earth failure because again, these flight times show that the distances on the globe are the correct ones. So I'm sorry, Nathan, because actual evidence does not support the R value of your fantasy flat Earth. And that's because we live on a globe with a radius of about 3,959 miles.